Hey, everybody, it's Lauren DeLisa Coleman back with another episode during the San Francisco Film Festival. And I am so excited to bring you this next episode during the Inside series for Filmio, like we do it nowhere else. I am so into being able to talk with this next filmmaker because she's coming from a city that I love and she is an alum. So we've really got to get into it. Everybody, please welcome Mounia Akel, who is coming to us live and direct from Paris, France. And so Mounia, welcome to the Inside series.
Thank you.
I am so glad to be able to talk with you about your film. The name of her film is Costa, Brava, Lebanon. And it's just very unique. And I think something that we have not, or rather a city and a whole kind of topic that we really haven't had much in the cultural narrative as of late, but, is so very important. So tell me, Mounia, give me, I guess, a synopsis, please, as we always start, with Costa Brava.
Costa Brava is the story of a Lebanese family in Lebanon that runs away from the city of Beirut, which broke their hearts and made them feel like they were held hostage, to create a self-sustainable exile in the mountains of Lebanon. And this family's utopia is destroyed when the government decides to build an illegal garbage landfill outside their fence.
So you are Lebanese, right? That's part of your background. I'm assuming that, you brought a lot of that kind of cultural experience and love to the project, but tell me how this particular story kind of came to light and why it was so important for you to tell this particular story within that culture.
Yes. I mean, of course, I wrote what I knew, so there was never any reflection of I'm writing a story about Lebanon. I was just writing my experience. And there were two themes. Of course, we're all defined by the countries that we came from. Not that it's the only thing that defines us, but I think there were two themes that I was interested in developing and that had been cooking inside my stomach for a while. One of them was family, because I think that growing up, that's where I got all of my inspiration at home, from what I learned from my parents, from what I didn't learn from my parents, from just my experience in between those walls and how rich it was in emotions and electricity. And also my relationship to Lebanon. And I think growing up in Lebanon, I noticed this constant friction between the outside and the inside, because the country situation can make you feel so tense that all of this tension has repercussions in the private and intimate space at home. And that's what I wanted to explore with this film, how a country and its system that is so destructive, what it can do to the human.
Right.
Yes.
I think this is just fascinating. And like I said, we have not really heard a lot about Lebanon. I mean, most recently in the news, it's like 2 to 3 things that are repeated over and over again. One of the many reasons that I appreciated living in Paris is that I really felt that the news was certainly much more international, every night. And I think that that's something that we miss here. But even with that, there's still the top 5 areas of the world, and that's the only place where things are happening. So I'm really glad that you can kind of bring this back into the narrative. And I want to I guess talk with you about how that kind of syncs with your journey as a filmmaker in general. So when did you first kind of think, okay, I think I'm going to try this film thing out and write and direct and all that?
For sure, going off what you're saying, growing up, and especially also when I studied in the US, because I studied architecture before studying film, I realized how much I found myself trying to explain where I come from and how it's defined to people around me. And I understood how misrepresented we were. I even noticed that growing up as a child, because I would watch films from all over the world and it connected me to myself and to the world, because you travel and you discover a young girl in a movie that reminds you of your own experience, even though she lives across the ocean. But one thing I felt growing up is that I didn't see the experience of a young Arab woman portrayed in those other countries in a way that was faithful or accurate. And that kind of like became a challenge for me, like to talk about Lebanon, talk about my experience, and in a way that I can, own the narrative that had, been hijacked somehow. And so, but your question was about how I got into film. I think, I tackled that. I think that I got into film because film for me was a way to discover the world. I would watch a film and feel like I would, whether it's a film like Peter Pan or a film like Cries and Whispers, I always felt like it allowed me to travel into someone else's mind and then understand mine a little bit better, or travel to another country to understand mine a little better. Sometimes understand why those are different, sometimes understand why they're similar. And I understood that the types of films I liked are not the types of films that reassured me, but those that allowed me to understand that some questions don't have answers.
I think it's so funny that you say that last line, because it just reminds me of what has kind of always been said about maybe like kind of French films versus films made in America, right? Where there's always like the happy ending or a completely perfect closure, where you can watch many French films and it is kind of like life all too often, that you don't really understand things, and the characters can be okay with that, right? I think it just speaks to culture and values and how kind of the different peoples decide how they tell stories. And I think that's just kind of fascinating. So you decided you wanted to get into film and all, and so is that what brought you to the US originally for your studies, or was it architecture and then while you were here you started studying film?
Yes. And because you said something, of course, there are those who claim that you should leave, the cinema with answers and reassured, and others that allow more confusion. And I think in America and everywhere else, there's the two types of films, right? Those that raise questions and those that try to give answers. And I think depending on your state of mind, you can appreciate different ones. It's just that, like, I think it was reassuring for me, for example, when I discovered the French New Wave, or even, independent cinema in the US. It was reassuring to see that, some characters don't know what the hell they're doing, and they are confused, and they can't just be heroes all the time. But also it's nice to see a film where you feel empowered by the character. It's nice to see a film that makes you accept your own confusion and melancholia. And so, yeah. And so the reason why I studied architecture first was because when I was 17, I really loved architecture because my parents made me love it. They are architects. But I also loved cinema because my parents are cinephiles, and cinema was part of our routine. But I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker around that age, but I was too scared to do it because Lebanon is a place that doesn't have a big film industry. It feels like you're really brave if you do something like that. And I didn't feel I had that bravery at that moment. So I thought, I'll do the other thing I love, architecture. And when I started studying architecture, I loved architecture, but the frustration of not doing what I want helped me really understand that that's what I wanted. So I focused all of my architecture studies on how can I learn how to be a filmmaker and understand space in a way that can help me in filmmaking. And I plan to get a master's later. And slowly, every weekend, I would shoot films with a friend of mine who had the same frustration as me. He was a consultant, but was passionate about filmmaking. I started doing workshops in filmmaking in the summer. And one thing led to another. I started directing on the weekends and on my vacation. And then when I got to Colombia to do my MFA in film, I already had experience. I had learned it on the streets, and I really wanted to learn it in a classroom after that.
Monia, I think that is so great. Talk about like balancing, right? You are like kind of the epitome of that. So it's really paid off. You have this film now. I'd love to hear a little bit about, kind of the making of it, but let's talk, I guess, a little bit maybe about the support that you had making it too, because, you're part of both a program that Cannes creates as well as Sundance. So, two very powerful kind of institutes behind you. Tell me a little bit about how you either applied to them or found out about them, and what role they played in bringing Costa Brava to the screen.
Yes. My short film, which was my thesis film from Colombia, got into the Cine Foundation category in Cannes. And that introduced me to the Cine Foundation organization in Cannes, which is an amazing institution that really supports new voices. For example, Cine Foundation is for student films, and the residents of the Cine Foundation host 6 filmmakers every 6 months in the house of the Cannes Film Festival in Cannes. They live together, each have a room there, and it's just time and space to write without any distractions. Nice. And with roommates that you can exchange with as well. So what the residency gave me is time and space to create. I got to know them through, my short film that went to Cannes. And how did I hear about I applied with my short film to Cannes, well, because it's Cannes and everyone applied at that moment. About the Sundance Labs, it was the opposite of Cine Foundation residence, because if the Cannes residence was just time and space and 6 months in Paris and just, no mentorship or anything, the Sundance Labs was the opposite. It was 1 month on the Utah, the Sundance Resort on the Sundance Mountain, where every week every fellow would shoot one scene from the feature to workshop and to explore ahead of shooting the film a year later. So what happens is that you have a crew there that you're assigned. So you're shooting the scene that you selected. You're editing it in 2 days, and then every week there's a round of mentors that enter and just watch the scene with you and discuss with you and try to accompany you through your creative process and what's the visual language you're trying to define. The actor playing the father in Costa Brava joined me on the mountain, so it was also a way for me to get to know him better. Cool. And the mentors were, every week there was one mentor from each department, like an editor, an actor, a cinematographer. And so the conversations were very specific, but it was really intense, and it was also really, it was the place where I really understood the story I wanted to tell and how, and so those two really complemented each other.
That is so amazing. So now, what are maybe the most, important points or key kind of takeaways from those programs that actually, you used in the making of Costa Brava?
Of course, sometimes you learn things, and then when you're on set, you forget that you learned them.
Right.
For example, one thing I really learned in the Sundance Labs is really the importance of creating a space, a mental space that is really zen and relaxed and very cleansed in order to create your best work. But when you're in Lebanon and the country's collapsing, you just survived an explosion and you have to make a film with less money than you expected. It's hard to just be in that state of mind. But I had built this knowledge of how important it is to build a family, to create a team, to surround yourself with people you love. You don't always succeed. Sometimes you bring in the wrong people into your life, but it's your challenge as a director to really surround yourself and surround others with respect, and to create what feels like a family, so that we're all working for the same objective. I think that I've learned a lot of things in the last few years, and I've tried to take them with me everywhere. But I think that the biggest lesson is to know who to surround yourself with. I think it's a lesson because sometimes I succeeded in it and sometimes I didn't. And the difference in what comes out in the result is so obvious. I think I would have done something else if I want to just make films and feel like we're making something special and we're all telling a story, because, it's a process that's inside out.
I think that just sounds like so wise, and that you can tell as you're talking that you've been through an awful lot to be able to bring, all all of this to the screen, but it's also enriched you as a person too. And I can just kind of sense that. So now you shot the film and then you're going along on your way. And then now all of a sudden you're in like the San Francisco Film Festival. This is also a participant film. How did this kind of come about? And I think, is it, does ICM have something to do with this or no? Maybe I think I'm thinking about a different film, but participant most definitely, which is no, kind of small thing to be kind of a part of. So tell me how that came about for you, Munia.
So when I wrote the script, of course, when you get into labs and workshops, you start meeting people. And so when we got into the Tribeca Film Network, it was like one-on-one, a speed dating thing where we got to meet a lot of people. It was the beginning of the pandemic. It was the first lockdown, so it moved to online. And one of the people that we met who fell in love with the script was a woman called Harriet at Endeavor. And she right away felt really connected to the story, to the script. And she knew that MK2 were our French sales agents. And so what happened is that she shared our script with participant, and participant asked for a meeting, telling us that they really loved the story and that they were excited in, collaborating. Of course, I have a lot of respect for what participant stands for as a company and as filmmakers, from the work that they do and also their intentions behind the work that they do. And they do practice what they preach. And so we met, really liked each other. We found a way to have MK2 in France and participant like that for the deal to work. And they joined in on script before we went into shooting. And they became creative partners from that moment on.
Wow. I mean, I think that's so great. And also, too, I didn't know that Mcadoo had a sales division. I always think of them as the major, that wonderful theater at Bibliothèque, that metro stop.
Yeah,
which I love.
They have cinemas, they're sales agents, and a while ago they were also distributors. They're sales agents, and they have cinemas all over Paris, not in Europe also.
Right. Wow. So I just think this is so wonderful. So, but you aren't planning to come to San Francisco then, are you?
I am.
Or you are. Okay. So now is this going to be the first time that you have been in San Francisco, or what's the story? Okay. No, you're like just a total San Francisco girl hanging out.
No, not at all. I traveled. I road tripped from LA to San Francisco with my ex-boyfriend. But I was just there for 3 days or something, so I don't really know it. Okay. But I loved it so much when I went there.
Great. So now, how long are you planning to be there?
5 days.
Very nice. So are you excited? I mean, what are you looking either forward to, or what kind of strategy do you have? Because I mean, you can kind of lay back a little bit. You already have participants in Mcadoo, right? You're not out like kind of looking for, the energy to make this project happen. You have, I guess, what one could say is the luxury of just kind of seeing who you meet and how and things like happen maybe for the next project, right? Do you have any type of, I don't know, either tips or, like I said, strategy for approaching film festivals when you're in such a position, or, or just like kind of Munia's own way to like kind of make it through?
I think every festival offers you something that you don't expect. And of course, like we had our US premiere, we premiered in Chicago and in LA and AFI and TIFF after Venice. And every festival brings something different. But I think for me, where I am now is on one side, I'm excited to meet the audience and see, see what the San Francisco audience takes away from the film. I'm excited to watch the film of my friend Francisca Alegria on a big screen, and that's important for me. And of course, I'm interested in meeting people in the industry for my future projects, for my career. I think in general in a festival, apart from this exchange with the audience, is also meeting potential collaborators. And so coming prepared about what you're interested in and other things that you want to work on as well.
I like that idea a lot too, of potential collaborators rather than, just solely looking for kind of the business side of things in terms of, distribution, et
Yes.
cetera. So that's great. So Munia, anything that you want to add before, we close? Any, I don't know, tips, insights, anything?
About what? Anything you want.
Anything about, you, the film, the industry, any trends that you might be seeing that you're excited about, anything that at all that you would want to share before we just wrap up?
I don't know. I think I'm just excited about the fact that with everything that everyone has been through in the last couple of years, what cinema will come out of that? Like I'm interested in seeing. I think that, for example, the conversation about mental health has been, or at least in my environment, has been much more free than before. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I'm happy to see. I'm excited to discover what stories will come out of the last 2 years of our lives, I would say.
Okay, so let's see, because I'm sure many are as well. So how can we keep up with everything that you're doing in the film itself? I don't know if the film has an actual site or not, because I've, of course, been going through Participant to prepare for this. But for our wonderful viewers, is there a site? Are you yourself active on social? What's like kind of the best way? Because, fans will be watching. So what's the best way to reach you?
There's my Instagram, munya.akl. And there's also the Participant website. There's my website.
What's the URL for your site? Is it your name? What's the website address for
MOUNIAAKL? Okay, and there's also my producers, ABBOUT Productions on Instagram that update people about the film. And there's MK2 and participants pages that update about the film.
Great. Well, I hope that you have a great time at the festival and a safe flight. I'm glad that we could catch you, right before you get ready to go. And Munia, just continued success. I mean, it just you just seem really poised for a lot of interesting creativity and business to be able to come, forth. So I wish you really the very best.
Lauren, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And, just I hope everything is fun in Paris as well when you're back there for the summer, because it is a great place to be for the summer as well.
Yes.
So you guys, I hope that you have enjoyed watching this interview with Munia. Again, the name of the film is Costa, Brava, Lebanon. Check it out. And, we'll be bringing you many more interviews during the San Francisco Film Festival right here during the Inside series for Filmio. Thanks for watching.